Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
You're listening to the Skift Podcast. Today on the podcast, Skift Editorial Director of Events Brian Quinn and Director of Research Seth Borko preview the topics and speakers of next week's Skift Global Forum. Happening September 26th through the 28th in New York City, the momentous 10th Annual Skift Global Forum will explore the theme of connection in the age of AI and feature leaders from throughout travel deciphering the big trends facing the industry. Visit live.skift.com for information on speakers, schedules, and how to attend. Enjoy the conversation.
All right, welcome, Seth.
Great to be here, Brian. Excited.
Yeah, we're 1 week out, or less than a week out now, from Skift Global Forum. So excited. This is one of the most important times of the year at Skift. Our entire company, 80 people, come together from all around the world. I don't know how many countries. They all convene together and we descend upon New York for Skift Global Forum. It's happening September 26th through 28th. If you're not registered yet, please. Why aren't you registered yet?
It's the best conference in all of travel, best event in all of travel.
We're looking forward to seeing 1,000 of our friends, of leaders across travel, and of course, everyone that we work with every day. So this is going to be great. So today, we're going to go through some of these themes. There's so many incredible ideas and things that we're sharing and discussing on stage. Our Skift editors and research analysts are unpacking. So we're going to cover here some of the big ideas, the big picture views that are happening across travel, and that this is the 10th year of Skift Global Forum. And so part of this is looking at, understanding how that has come together, and then also what the themes and the ideas might be for the next 10 years. So before we get into that, though, Seth, you had some incredible news today, the Skift Travel 200. So this was launched just today, September 20th. Tell us what this is.
Yeah, Brian. So we've just launched a new data product. It's called the Skift Travel 200. It's actually just a stock index that brings together 200 of the largest publicly traded companies in travel. So it works just like the S&P 500 would. If you want a pulse on the U.S. economy, you would check the S&P 500. If you want maybe to understand tech, you would check the NASDAQ. There has been no equivalent thing for travel, ever. And so we wanted to launch. There's now more and more publicly traded companies than there's ever been in the travel industry. I mean, we are one of the largest industries in the world globally, right? Like 1 in 10 jobs worldwide in the travel industry. But if you wanted to just say, well, how did travel as an industry do in the stock market globally today? Very, very hard to do until today. So we've launched this product and this database. And the whole idea is, I think, very much aligned with kind of what we think about all the time at Skift, with both our news, with our events, with our research, is about, breaking down barriers and silos between sectors. So often travel says, oh, well, I'm an airline, I'm not part of travel. I'm a hotel, I'm not part of travel. And that's just not true, right? It's all connected to the travel industry. Nearly $1 trillion of market value out there in the travel industry that we wanted to bring together, just like kind of we're going to try and bring it together in our news and our events and all our other coverage.
Yeah, and that's what's incredible about the forum next week as well, that we have so many public companies, and the CEOs always come each year to share what their thoughts are, which is, of course, an interesting view. It's a view on what the decision makers and some of the consequential voices are thinking, and where they're taking their companies, which has a broad impact, sweeping impact across travel. So from Airbnb and Uber's CEOs to Hilton, Hyatt, and also then Expedia, Booking Holdings, and of course investors like Certares and Altimeter. So it's going to be
not coming, Brian. Who's not?
I know.
Coming?
It's hard. It's amazing each year. I really wish we had more time, because there are so many voices that I wish we could include, but we're very excited for this incredible grouping. So one of the big themes that we look at across for this year, and it's hard to ignore, that one of the biggest sort of news items has been this idea of generative AI, and now it's kind of subsided a little bit. But the way we think about it is, as we look at the future and think about the long term connection in the age of AI, which is the theme, it's really more broadly about this era of digital automation opening up for our future. So we think about the human to human connection, which in many ways you could say is like the original promise of travel and this idea of connection, but as well the human to machine and then machine to machine connections that will accelerate at a pace we've never seen before in the world. So
I mean, I like the theme a lot, Brian, because like you said, the theme is connection in the age of AI. And I think that both the AI piece of it is important, but also the connection piece of it is just super, super important, because so much of the travel industry is about connection. Maybe it's business travel, you're making a connection with colleagues, maybe it's family travel, you're making a connection with friends, or just connections with other cultures, as a leisure tourist. That's the core of travel. And so I like bringing it back to not just the technology piece, the AI piece, but also like about how do we continue to make those connections, but empowered by technology.
Yeah. And so not every talk is about AI. It's not all just, that's not an AI conference suddenly, but it's definitely all about the future of travel. But it is popping up in interesting ways. I mean, there's the incumbents, which we know, which is companies like Expedia, Booking, Uber has one of the largest LLMs, in the industry, if not the largest. Google, right? So of course, and they're really thinking. I mean, they've been using AI for a while. It's just generative AI now has this, in a sense, more consumer or sexy spin to it. So they are looking at the implications of this tool, but then also broadly what automation can do for travel. And it's also popping up in some interesting ways that you might not think of. So Gary Morrison from Hostel World Group is speaking about connection. And of course, we know hosteling is huge in travel. But what we might not think about is it is about that in-person connection on the ground. And so for Gary, the thing he's asking himself is, how do you foster that? How do you create that? Where can AI fill the gap and really understand through data what these travelers desire, and maybe get them to kind of self-select or self-organize through the platform and find new ways to meet each other, which is really one of the best parts of travel. Of course, Navan, you're interviewing Navan on stage, Ariel Cohen.
Can't wait. I mean, they're doing a lot of exciting stuff with artificial intelligence. Not just, I mean, they're obviously doing the generative AI stuff. They're launching chatbots, but they have on the back end a lot of really interesting machine learning and all sorts of sorting and ranking algorithms that they're really excited to talk about on stage. So
yeah, definitely. And I think we're going to see a swell of bottom up innovation. I think the big question. So, for example, we have Spencer Raskoff, who's the if you don't know him, he co-founded Hotwire, Zillow, so many companies. A great entrepreneur, and he has a really interesting view on AI. And of course, it is right now dominated by incumbents, and he gets pitched hundreds of things, every week. So it's interesting to think about, are we designing, are we creating features, or are we creating companies or these bigger products? So we're going to unpack that. Our new editor in chief, Sarah Coppett, is going to speak with him on stage, and we're going to unpack that a bit, as well as other, broad issues around online travel and the implications there. Of course, we're going to look at mobility and with Uber CEO, which is the closing discussion. So Rafet's going to be on stage. Our founder CEO Rafet Ali is going to be on stage with Dara Khosrowshahi, CEO of Uber, and
former
there's
CEO of Expedia, of course.
So many threads.
The travel industry.
Not at all. No, and he's 6 years in, so very interesting view. And it's great to kind of culminate the event on the 28th with Dara, because he does have this really big picture view of all of travel, and he's done so many incredible things with Uber, in a sense, turning it around and then looking ahead to the future. So his view on AI, and also Brian Chesky's, and there's so many product changes happening there, which he has touted is going to be one of the biggest forces changing our future. So maybe understanding a little bit more of his view of. Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know if our listeners have not attended a global forum before, but Brian Chesky is like a cannot miss speaker. He's really dynamic on stage, and always has something exciting to launch and something new to say. So that's one I'm really very much looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Is and in many ways a very singular view, often on the future and the way he's able to run Airbnb. And then there's also Frederick Lalonde of Hopper, who has also been very deep with AI and powering that. So we're getting a lot of it throughout the event, but that's not all. Those aren't the only themes. Like I said, it's not just an AI conference now. It is kind of fascinating though, how it is. So many leaders are already, really adopting and thinking about this and have been for a long time, but now it's a whole new view. So in addition to that, we have some other big picture, long tail themes that we think will play out over the next 10 years, the next 10 global forums. So to start, right now, it's hard to argue that we're still in a travel boom. And there's a big question around that. And how long will that last? And so, and I know actually, I don't want to give away too much, but you're going to tease some of this in your state of travel presentation. Of course, Skift Research puts out a state of travel every year. You're going to update that and share some thoughts. So give us a little peek into that.
Yeah. We won't give away too much of the farm, but I mean, no, it's a big question, right? Is that we had these terrible years during COVID. Then we had this amazing travel boom where, people hadn't been on the road forever. They were really rediscovering the magic of travel. It was a much higher priority for people. And there was a lot of, frankly, savings and a lot of pent up demand that led to this kind of huge travel boom we've seen over the last years. And I think there's this, it's not the best word in the world, but like normalization. The question is like how, when, where, why will we normalize? We're going to talk about it definitely on stage. I mean, we are seeing signs of normalization, but I think we're far we're far from a complete crash or slow down the travel.
No,
we're still very optimistic, and it depends where you look too. I mean, if you look in Asia Pacific or China, you can see some more signs of growth than in other parts of the industry. So there's a lot of interesting nuances to that. Like, is this travel boom coming to an end conversation? And there's a lot there.
And despite recessionary concerns, we've not seen a slowdown. We've not seen, despite inflation. And so that's going to be also really interesting to unpack. But investors are still watching carefully. It's still an interesting market right now, right? So we do have Greg O'Hara from Certara speaking with Rafid on stage. I mentioned Brad Gerstner from Altimeter. So
yeah, and
will be
these investors, they
Yeah.
want to have confidence in the outlook to put very large amounts of dollars to work, right, in our industry, to invest in all the new technology that we're talking about in new regions, in new markets. So it'll be fascinating to hear from them in particular about where they want to put their bets, so to speak, and how they view this environment.
Yeah. And so thinking about new markets, there's also a lot that will come up throughout the forum about demographic shifts. So we've talked about India for quite some time, and of course it's usurping China in terms of population. And of course, there's always questions about China too, and other regions of the world. And I think the general premise is that there are, particularly in the West, there's a rapidly aging population. And there's also regions that are gaining influence very quickly and that are younger, that are coming online. So this future of demographics is fascinating to us and to the future of travel. So we'll see this happen and discussed quite often.
Yeah, I mean, look, as the world gets as countries, as people get wealthier, they are going to travel more, right? People are inherently interested in the worlds around them. And there's things with business travel. They want to expand, increase trade, increase tourism, increase leisure. And so as we see these increasingly younger populations getting older, getting wealthier all across the world, I think it becomes increasingly kind of myopic to just look at what's happening in the US or just look at what's happening in Europe. And there's this much broader perspective that's going to drive a lot of dollars in travel, does today, and certainly for Skift Global Forum 2033 will be a much bigger topic.
Yeah, we try to look beyond the Western lens as much as we can. And it's awesome that we also are just recently announced an India forum in
I can't
Delhi in
wait.
March, 2024. So great to see what's going to happen. We're very much looking forward to what will happen there.
Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman,
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South,
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke,
We all win when we all partner together.
plus Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
So some other themes, we've often talked about the great merging in recent years, the blending of travel, how we live, work, and travel, and how that comes together. So this is also another way to think about this right now is the future of work. So how this plays out, it continues to impact travel's future. It will have a heavy influence. AI will have a heavy influence here as well. It'll affect labor. And also how we think about leisure time and balance. Of course, I mean, there's plenty to discuss about the adding of work of leisure days onto a work trip or traveling with your family. So definitely, the way we're living is very different. So we think that'll continue to play out.
I think almost assuredly, right? Like
Right.
it's really interesting to see what's happening there, and exactly what you're saying about these blended trips. I mean, what's interesting is that I think people have recognized this trend. We're finally now starting to see real investments in it, right? Like you sort of had maybe some blended travel resources available to a travel company in 2022,
Mhm.
but now we're starting to see companies build purpose-built blended travel kind of products and services and roll those out, and it's just a
Mhm.
really exciting area to be following.
Yeah, one facet of this is nomads, which Lauren Razavi from executive director of Plumia, she also focuses a lot on visas for nomads. But there's a interesting presentation where she's going to kind of dive into the idea of well, dispel some misnomers about what nomads are and what they represent, but also will our travel be more nomadic in the future? Will we potentially adopt some of these principles? She herself has been a nomad for well over a decade. So it's interesting to see how this will go. Of course, solo travel or people deciding to take sabbaticals and work even with their family from other parts of the world is not going away. No.
Absolutely
So
not.
yeah. So it'll be great. The Another one is climate adaptation. So of course, sustainability has been at the top of everyone's minds for the past few years, and it continues to be. So, but the idea of the process of adjusting to these, effects of climate change, and will this, this essentially could be a defining challenge um, for maybe even this century. Then how will travel adapt to it? And last year we McKinsey, I believe, had and Skift Research had a whole presentation
Yeah.
on implementation of sustainability principles. So we know that is the name of the game, implementation. And I think while we're not necessarily diving into all of those tactics at the forum this year, it is very front and center in our minds. So I guess, Seth, what are you kind of curious about right now when it comes to, let's say, climate adaptation, that sustainability principle in general? What is more than just sort of lip service?
Well, I think that's the key to it,
Yeah.
Brian. There is a lip service component to it, and I've kind of talked sometimes about tagline, like sustainability needs to move from the marketing department to the operations department, right? It can't just be a byword; it needs to be action. And it's really interesting to see how companies are adapting. I think it's increasingly becoming the backdrop for all tourism across the world in terms of how it affects where people want to go, what they can do when they get there. We saw those heat waves in Europe over the summer, for instance. It's not something that we can ignore anymore. I think one of the pieces of research we covered actually in the McKinsey report last year was about you know how much are people really willing to pay for sustainability and for different changes. And one of the things we've seen emerge as a consensus is actually around corporate travel, around business travel as maybe having some of the best propensity to pay for it. We've had some discussions around new technologies whether it be more sustainable fuel sources or construction types or ways of just running your businesses. So I'm always really keeping an ear out for companies and businesses that are taking this seriously, that are finding ways not just to adapt, but I guess to thrive and extend and to find revenue opportunities and business opportunities to go talk to their corporate customers and drive real value by being a leader in climate adaptation and sustainability.
Yeah, I am curious what comes up with. So we have David Neeleman, who is the founder of JetBlue and also founder CEO of Breeze Airways now. So he'll be on stage. I don't think he's been like incredibly supportive of SAFs generally, is from what I've seen. But it'd be great to speak with him and see what he thinks. David's a very data-driven and realist person, and I'm very curious to see how he thinks about this. Of course, we will address it in earnest during our aviation forum coming up in November, on November 1st in Fort Worth. But yeah, as far as airlines go, David will kind of maybe give his view, and I think we'll see also Intrepid, of course, will be on stage. And
Intrepid's a great example too. They have been very committed to climate change, and it goes to show it goes beyond just airlines too. Airlines are a big part of it, but it's more than that, right? It's the entire industry, and you can't just point your finger at the airlines and say, let them figure it out. And I love to see companies like Intrepid that are taking leadership on that stuff.
Yeah. So there's a conversation with Visit Britain and Intrepid together, and James will present up front. And James really broadly looking at profit and purpose together. And then with Visit Britain, I think it's not sort of overt about sustainability. And sometimes that's the way it's implemented, is it's not just for sustainability's sake. It's about maybe distributing travel beyond the centers of a city, and how through that distribution, you kind of get this more sustainable approach by working with local communities. So it's always interesting how, for us, how we kind of see where travel hopefully is not traveling backwards in a sense, that we have to look ahead to the future, and that includes destinations. So that means, what is the kind of new definition around tourism? How does sustainability just kind of get baked in, play a role? And for James, his thing is about being profitable while still having purpose at the center of his business model. So yeah, it'll come up throughout. Another theme that's going to be a little bit softer, very interesting, that is about people and the kind of empathy side of travel, perhaps, is this idea of a loneliness crisis. And I know that this will come up a number of times. James, who I just mentioned from Intrepid, Brian Chesky has spoken about this. And I sense that it's really kind of, when we think about individualistic Western societies, and then also not, the coming effects of AI and being more digital and in a remote world, and all of the things coming out of the pandemic, that travel's value and importance has become even more central as a way to connect us and to, we've said before, Skift Research has said the world will become more polarized in the future, as well as maybe more dysfunctional. But how do you think about this, Seth?
I think it's a great point, and something that I think brings it almost full circle, right? Back to that initial big picture theme about connection in the age of AI. And I was saying how I think that connection piece is so important, because we are seeing people spend more time with screens, more time with computers. There's a huge amount of flexibility and advantages that come with being remote, but you do lose perhaps some of that camaraderie if it's not done well. And so we are absolutely seeing people need, not just a desire, it's a human need for connection. And increasingly, they need to be more mobile to find more of those connections. People are more spread out there in different places. And so travel is becoming kind of I guess you could even call it like the essential infrastructure to build some of those person-to-person connections. And so I think it is maybe a softer theme, but I think an incredibly important one that really kind of drives us back to, why do people travel in the first place? Why do you need to go see, Paris in person? Because you want to meet the local people and experience the local culture. Or why do you need to go meet a colleague in person on a business trip? To really make those face-to-face connections. And so, I think it all comes back to that at the end of the day, and it's a huge thing.
And Skift is about the business of travel, and this does relate to the business, because whether it's hospitality for a big hotel brand, or even the value of the experience you're getting, say with Accor, through luxury, which we have them on stage as well, or Johannes Reck from Get Your Guide talking about the future of experiences, and I guess this is part of that human to human and human to machine element. Can AI now make the on the ground, so to speak, experience for travelers more human? And what how can we think about the experiences sector going ahead? So there is a business implication even with these kind of broad sort of emotional almost themes.
Yeah. Oh, it's all about, I think at the end of the day, it is all about the
Yep.
business, and it's a huge business opportunity. And we see in the hospitality space, to your point, right? Like Accor, Marriott, all invest in brands and in building lobby design and hotel design that fosters connections to hostel world, like you mentioned earlier. And to your point about Get Your Guide and technology, right? Like, we're not trying to be Luddites here and say that all technology bad. It's about using technology and building it and investing it in a way that enables connection, and then that drives returns on investment for the industry and drives repeat business and customers. So it all ties back to the business.
Another session I'm reminded of. So it's so great this year. We've been trying for years, but the Sheila Johnson, who's the first, she's the founder CEO of Salamander Collection, and also was a co-founder of BET, one of the first Black women billionaires ever. If I think the first, and yet there's so much dedication, and she's often in the lobby of her properties, and you could connect with her there. I think she, more than anyone, understands that value of human connection and driving that experience, the heart of what travel and hospitality is. So Sean O'Neill, our senior hospitality editor, will be interviewing her on stage. We'll get a glimpse of her view and her history, and also what drives her. And I think that, there's so much that I hope for in terms of people that can understand that broader future of why we do what we do in travel and why the industry is there and the future.
Yeah, and if anyone's gonna get to that point, Sean's a great interviewer too. So I that's gonna be a great conversation.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I did not mention, we're going to open up, this is a late edition, but Sean's going to interview Christopher Niceta on stage, CEO of Hilton, which we know. We've just added Adel Al-Fakir, the CEO of the Morocco National Tourism Office. And that's going to be at our opening night event on the 26th. So we're really excited that Adel could join us. And talking about heart, there's so much, with Morocco that they've endured over the past few weeks since the earthquake. And I should say, and of course, we know that it's not climate change related, but the disasters and all of this are going to be a bigger part of travel's future, and that travel can also play a role in recovery and the building the future of these countries, these destinations, these people, working with people and providing that value. And it's so important. So we're excited to hear what Adel has to share and how he's looking forward. So Rafat will speak with him on stage at that opening night event on the 26th. So excited for that as well.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's going to be, it's such a big tourism economy in Morocco too. So I think it's just a fascinating intersection of how we deal with that stuff.
Yeah. So join us. If you're not joining us, why aren't you? And but we hope to see you there. So once again, Skift Global Forum happening September 26th through 28th. If only just for Seth's presentation, I think you'll have enough value out of that, of the state of travel. There's so many incredible ideas that are going to be shared. We're going to do our best to capture them all. And yeah, we hope to see you there. live.skift.com is where you should go if you've not secured your pass yet.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you there. I think there's nothing else like it in the travel industry, and you won't regret coming. So
no,
can't wait.
We'll get to see our whole team. We'll get to see all the Skift, all of the people that make up Skift. So, all right, thanks, Seth.
Thank you, Brian.
See you there.
This has been the Skift Podcast. Thank you for listening.